Hi, thanks for tuning in to our Practical Nerds weekly podcast. I'm Shubh, and together with my partner and co host Patrick, we normally invest in founders in design, construction, renovation, and logistics technology. Many of our friends in the ecosystem wanted us to start a podcast on the built world, and in return, we decided to honor their request with a show about nothing at all.
Hey Patrick, we're back again. Same time and day for a change, and live as well, right?
Nice. And
Right?
and finally back at home, not in the Black Forest.
Indeed, right? How have you been?
Yeah, doing great. It's getting rainy here. But who do I tell that? I think you're in London, are you?
That is right. That is
Nice.
right. I mean, I've nothing really to complain about, even though I'm talking to you, and in spite of that, I have nothing to complain about. So imagine how well my week must have been.
Yeah, you must be on the up. Nice. That I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Hey, so seems like we have a couple of interesting topics this time around. A little bit off page or of our usual theme, but I think very fascinating topics. Looking forward to discussing them. So, what's on the
Yes.
docket for us this time around?
Yeah, we wanna chat about two things, and I'll also mention what makes them a bit unusual for us. So one first topic we want to start with first half of today, talking about what we see anecdotally in incumbents in the construction value chain and what they do in terms of allocating software budgets, and
Hmm.
how that it seems to be extremely diametrical to how incumbents in other B2B sectors are currently cutting software budgets. So that's like on the docket for the first half. And then the second half, we want to talk about you and I, the value you and I have found in, construction and tech related events,
Yeah.
conferences, and how we treat that, because that's
Hmm.
a fun thing. And so these topics are a bit different because today we won't have much quantitative data. It will be more anecdotal.
Yeah. I mean, which is how we roll at Fundamental in any case. Right.
Oh
So,
God, people will believe you. Don't say that. So,
okay, just kidding, just kidding.
yeah.
Right. For the record, just kidding. Hey, but the very first topic you mentioned, right? I have to admit, I mean, it wouldn't strike me as being very intuitive, right? That construction firms would be upping their software spend or their budgets right now at this time, right? It seems extremely counterintuitive. Why do you think that might be the case from
Yeah, I
what you've
mean,
seen?
I first have to lean in with I think if you are quite active on social, you perhaps follow generalist VCs that have a large following, or you follow a lot of revered angels. It won't take you very long to find takes over the last 3, 6, perhaps 12 months that in most B2B markets, these VCs and angels will report that generic Fortune 500 companies are cutting software spend, are consolidating software stacks, etc. It won't take you very long to find these takes. Now, whether that's true or not, because I'm, not spending any time outside of the sectors that we cover, I couldn't say what's going on in FMCG or, automotive, etc. But it's been a take that you will find very, very quickly and repeatedly. Now, the interesting piece is within the construction value chain. We have, you and I and the whole team, we have several anecdotes where we actually find incumbents to increase their software spending. So go completely, I guess, counter-cyclical if you want, diametrical to the other B2B sectors. And so, yeah, I mean, let's discuss why that seems to be the case. I can
Hmm.
start with a quick thesis. So I think it's important to understand the difference in how construction as a model works different to, let's take manufacturing as a
Hmm.
model. And manufacturing covers automotive, it covers groceries, it covers chemicals, all of that. So how is construction as a model different from manufacturing? As an example, manufacturing is typically a serial process where you try to run a continuous line, highly repeatable, highly standardized, and because you never have any interruption, you're used to making adjustments more or less on the fly. The exception being a maintenance downtime or building up a new factory, whatever. But so you maximize for volume, for throughput, for stability, and you make your adjustments on the fly. And you have found a high level of efficiency. You're competing with other firms at a high level of efficiency. So you're constantly under pressure to find that additional efficiency while your process is running at full throughput. Look at construction now. Construction is a project type business. And here's how it works, right? I made an offer as a contractor, for example, on the project I'm currently running. And that offer I made, just to use a random number, 2 years ago.
Okay.
And now the project is maybe in full swing, and it's going to go on for a few more months, years. And then it's going to have an end date. The people on that project are not the same people on the other project that I have in my portfolio. And I also rotate people across projects depending on their specialization. Some people will be fixed, some people will rotate. But my main criterion is actually not throughput necessarily, it's utilization of my people. That's how I can make a lot of margin. And secondly, I need to make sure that on every project, I absolutely minimize the number of errors, defects, and delays. That kills my margin, right? So I'm absolutely not fussing with a running project. I'm not doing it. And if I have a full portfolio where my people are utilized, I also don't have any time in between projects to make an adjustment. So if I'm not making an adjustment during a project and I don't have time to make an adjustment in between projects, I'm never making adjustments. Now the thesis, and then I'll hand it over to you. We're now in a time where for the first time in a decade or longer, incumbents in the construction value chain, their order books are decreasing, their utilization is going down, the time between projects for certain people on the staff is becoming longer. So it's the first opportunity in a decade or longer to actually dedicate resources to rethinking your process and software stack without meddling with a running project. And the other thing is finally, software that helps you generate margin, that helps you generate cash flow, software that helps you generate new orders. That's part of the stack that you currently want to implement, especially.
Yeah, I would have to borrow from, so one of the points you made about things perhaps getting a bit worse in recent times. So the general impression I have across several conversations, and of course, you've also been part of many of those conversations, Patrick. The feeling I have is recently in construction, many firms, many stakeholders have this general, call it paranoia, call it fear, call it a state of being, if you will, that there's a new thinking that they're likely to be disrupted and they need to be more active participants of being in a state of active recovery or active regeneration or being aware of what's new to sort of level up. And I think that maybe, I think it might be different in other sectors where you have a sort of incumbency status quo, where because you're an incumbent, that allows you more breathing room in terms of margin for error. I get the feeling in construction, and by the way, this is me just going off on a limb, judging from various conversations, what is said, hypothesis, that they are in a bit more of a state of, hey, are we getting disrupted? Are recent events like a harbinger of something much worse? Do we need to be on alert now? Do we need to up our game a little bit? So I get that sense quite a bit, right? Which is an interesting time. Usually it's a great time for an industry to reinvent itself, great time for either new winners to emerge altogether or for incumbents to reinvent themselves to become even greater companies.
That's a fascinating thesis, and it feels like that very much reflects the state that construction is in. I want to tie that to actually a comment that Sean Foster here left on LinkedIn during our live stream. So Sean's point is that in the manufacturing space, the predictability is significantly higher due to the high throughput, standardized processes, etc. And so he's making the point that it's easier to calculate standardization and innovation on that process. Whereas in construction, to Sean's point, is every environment, every project, every process is always a little bit different. And so that predictability is not there. So when I combine Sean's point with yours, Shub, it's actually, it seems to me like this state of reinvention can only or is more likely to happen once the order books go down and the utilization goes down and you have the time to actually think about that. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the time we're currently, I mean, that's the current time. That's the time we're in. Is exactly that.
I mean, obviously, construction is very broad, as we are aware, and we have talked about in many episodes. But there's a lot of firms, for example, who, and this is fascinating, even though they've seen the last year or two being some of the best years or the best years of their existence, it still leads them to question, hey, is it likely we'll see another good year? Could it be that the next year will be terrible? So let's plan ahead, right? How can we hedge ourselves? How can we better prepared for what will likely be a tough year? And that usually it's a sign of a mature firm or a firm or a sector which is more self-aware that and it's not resting on its laurels. So I find that evolution interesting, and I would like to believe if you look at it from a 5-year, 10-year horizon, this sort of mindset shift will reap huge rewards.
One of the things that that I find interesting, and I'm not sure what, for example, a large contractor would have to say necessarily about the following point. So in a manufacturing environment, you can't just change one part of your process and expect necessarily results. It needs to be really typically designed end to end to have a result. I think bottleneck theory, for example, being one example of what I'm saying. Whereas in construction, the nature is, because we're having projects, you can actually apply technology to one project and optimize that project without having to also apply it to the other projects that, for example, might be running, or you have a different crew with a different mindset or a different manager. They don't want to do it. And so I find it fascinating in the current environment. If I'm now, let's say, a contractor, and I find a good time, to your points, to your reasons why I want to adopt more technology and why I'm allocating more budget, would I actually insist that my organization rolls that software out across projects? Or would I actually insist, hey, prove it on one or two, or let's go with the ones that want to adopt, and then once we have that internal track record, we can roll it out to the others? Like, how would you approach this if you think about that?
So I'm inclined to say the latter is more likely, and at least what I have seen happen more often. But I think so in the past, the impression I used to form is that the latter would often be seen as, hey, it's just like a disposable budget. Do with it what you will. Let's try out this new solution or this new software somewhere here. Could be a pilot, or could be like a little project here. Now I think there's or it seems more of a focused mandate where the idea is to roll out new pieces of technology or software over larger parts of the organization, or over several projects or more projects. And the way you get that is with a very deliberate, focused deployment in one project, with a clear plan that, hey, 6 months later or a year later, it will result in a more elaborate launch.
I agree. And that's my biggest fear, is that this increase in allocation of software spending in the construction value chain, again, counter-cyclical to what we see, according to pundits in other B2B sectors, is ending up in SAP-style projects. Okay, so now let's throw money at our problem. Let's still allocate whatever, these millions of budget, but we're doing a new ERP project, and that's going to make us a real different firm. I hope that's not what people are doing when they increase their software budgets, but they are doing it more tactical and more almost like a startup. Let's prove one thing and then scale the thing that we've proven.
I mean, what you spoke about, I mean, it's quite fascinating. I was speaking, I think a month or two ago, with a partner from one of the world's most renowned consulting firms. You can take a guess, I guess, within those top three, give or take, and who covers specifically the construction and infrastructure space. And that person was telling me, so many construction firms, they want to be more enterprising, right? To actually collaborate with the very best very best firms offering specific solutions for what they're looking for. But in 80-90% of the cases, unless they have direct access, their starting point is usually either, hey, pick like the most expensive solution offered by let's say the top 2 or 3 listed public companies by market cap. So go with some generic solution there. Randomly wrote it out. Quite often, in some cases, not even relevant to construction, just like a generic horizontal solution slapped on top, or like a super cheap solution built by some random company which no one's heard about. And it's quite remarkable that that's the only 2 options. That's not the range, mind you. That's the only 2 sets of options.
According to his or her experience.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, there will be a bit of a perhaps roadblock to even if the industry is allocating bigger budgets right now. We've also learned that cybersecurity is becoming a real topic everywhere. It's becoming also a real topic in the construction value chain. So the ability to scale a non-enterprise ready software, even if it has proven itself, let's say on a number of projects, is at some point hampered by how quickly you can get that enterprise readiness, especially then in terms of like cybersecurity. So that's just a quick side note on another topic that we were being told of by experts from the industry that deal with this every day. But in total, I'm very encouraged by the several anecdotal data points that we're getting from actually not just contractors, like across the supply chain and across geographies that are allocating more software budgets. And I think that's also another point, like why construction tech as an asset class is so great to be in right now. I'm really glad about that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, I guess that's as good a segue as we'll get.
You're the master of segues. Tell me this one.
I mean, so all these conferences, events, ceremonies. What's up with that, man? What's up with that?
Oh man. I mean, first of all, what conferences are there, right? So there are like whatever industry-specific conferences. Then there are like generic tech conferences. I'm not going to mention any names. Again, use your Google, but and then there's sort of a mix between perhaps the 2, where there's like tech applied to an industry, and that becomes sort of a more specific event. So if we dumb it down like to these 3 types of events, I've always found it a bit odd that I have people in my network, some of them I would even call friends, that try to take every of those events of every of those categories and expect an ROI out of that. And when I ask them what is the ROI, typically universally the response I get, especially from the people close to me, is getting my name out there and finding new contacts. And every time I hear that, I'm like, do you know what the definition of ROI? Like that's not ROI. Okay, so go further, right? And then it typically, I don't know, it fizzles out or it becomes a funny conversation, etc. And I don't know, have you found any ROI in any of these when you participate?
Well, generally speaking, I would say no. If that has to be like a TLDR version of where I'm at, I think very, very, or occasionally you'll probably come across like a conference where the way the panel has been put together is very thoughtful and allows for a organic, harmonious discussion to emerge. And I think that ends up, in my opinion, being fulfilling for everyone involved, for each of the panelists, for whoever is participating, to kind of have a free-flowing discussion, allowing for opinions to sort of mesh in interesting ways, and for the audience or the listeners to benefit. I think what the problem I find with most panel discussions or most conferences with individual speakers, either it follows a specific script or a specific sort of sequence, or actually it just feels like an echo chamber, I have to say.
Indeed.
Right? And for those of you listening in, what I mean by echo chamber is you sort of you think you're making a point because you're hearing the voice and it's quite loud and amplified, but all you're doing is talking or maybe screaming into a small enclosed space, which reflects your own voice back to you. And if you're not aware, that maybe serves as a point of proof of self-validation, but it's not very fulfilling. It doesn't really help you develop as an individual, as a professional, etc.
And
And
by
I
the way,
think,
go on, please.
and the interesting thing is, I think the problem, with a few rare exceptions, the problem is more intense in construction because, in relative terms, we are a newer space where venture capital is going in. And therefore, the echo chamber effect is that much more intense because you have a smaller group, you have opinions formed in certain call it cliques, tribes, or groups of their own. So depending on which clique, which group you're tapping into, you may get a certain kind of voice amplified in an echo chamber. And I mean, so for instance, I've come across conferences or panel discussions where, I mean, I have wholeheartedly disagreed with the opinions, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But people literally, proclaiming depth of construction tech, saying, "Hey, XYZ, these are the reasons." So it really makes me wonder many things about the authority to make such statements, but also the unfortunate thing is for the listeners who go in assuming that the speakers of such statements have authority, it can have a very damaging effect.
That's one of my key gripes with doing this. So when someone puts content out on the internet, anybody, in writing or in video form, but it's stored for eternity, and there's a comment function, anybody can still put out there what they want, and it's not curated at the time of production, like this live stream is.
Yeah.
But it will get curated after production, after publication. So if I'm just gonna spew whatever bullshit here, people in the know will actually make sure
Yeah.
through curation that is being known. On a conference, that curation does not happen. That fact checking does not
Yeah.
happen. So that's one of my key problems. Two, VC as an industry and tech as an industry, even at the intersection with construction. So tech, construction tech, it's an insane PR industry. And that was unfortunately, that muscle was unfortunately trained and even further incentivized at the time of cheap money, when anybody could step in that could lump some money together and then begin investing, and then they could just go out there and start claiming stuff, because the industry rewards PR, but it doesn't necessarily reward facts. The facts then only count once you start doing diligence. But man, I mean, can you think? You probably can't even estimate with all of your limbs and toes and fingers how many companies we have seen over the years being touted online just to look at it and find out this company is going to go nowhere. Like too much burn, shit unit economics, leadership team not cohesive, etc. But there's this real PR effect. And so if you couple that with the previous point, conferences are like PR, like echo chambers and platforms, without necessarily being, fact checking. There is a type of event that I like, and that is a highly curated event, narrowed down to a specific topic, and the curation has put together a high quality group of people. And by quality, by the way, I don't mean pedigree or wealth or whatever. By quality, I mean people with authority on the subject and the ability to communicate that authority with facts. So if it's an event, small, curated down to a topic with those people, that I find amazing. And so, of that, give me more. But like general tech conferences to do a cocktail party, which by the way is completely tone deaf, given the state of the society and economy. that's an additional topic why I stay away. I'm not going.
Is there, I'm sure you've been asked this. I think most VCs have, and many founders listening in probably are wondering. I think we get asked by some of our portfolio founders, hey, I've come across so and so conference or this XYZ event. Should I go there? Right? So if you get a request like this, what would your advice to them be?
A couple of times. I can't think of any time where I have advised a founder that had asked me this, yeah, you should go because I think you will find value. Not a single time.
Yeah.
You?
I can't recall such a time happening either. I think in my 5 years at Fundamental, I think it's probably happened. So not the specific example I pointed out, or not the specific illustration I pointed out. I think there might have been just one or two specific events, and they fit the description of what you talked about, Patrick. Very curated. I'd call it almost like a club sort of get together. Maybe one or two in the last 5 years.
Right.
That's the sum total of what I've sort of got excited about.
Yeah. So, to give you an example, so there was an event by a VC friend of ours whom we hold in very high regard, and they put together like a very small group of people to learn from a stock exchange that is currently, of course, the number of IPOs went down. Also doing business development, and they put together that group in order to learn from that stock exchange how to prepare your portfolio companies for the next phase of IPOs.
Yeah,
now, that's amazing because you can translate this type of learning across your portfolio, and because it's very content driven, very fact driven, and the people have the authority to speak on that, and you don't get any other PR bullshit around that. That was a great time spent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so give me events for construction tech like that, I would do it. So if you're building something like that, you might be onto something, but perhaps not financially. Too small, I guess.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Well, luckily, we don't have to put out a ballyhoo on LinkedIn that we revoke our participation in certain tech events because of what these events represent in the first place anyway. Like cocktail parties, tone deafness. But now you know why.
Yeah.
Awesome. So are there any events, any meetings you look forward to in your calendar next week?
I think I can confidently state no events. So I think cross that one. So there's a few interesting meetings coming up. On the deal side, believe it or not, surprise, Patrick.
AI.
I'm digging into some AI applications.
Nice.
Dude. Yeah.
Nice. You got on the bandwagon.
I did. Took me a few months, but I'm now on that bandwagon.
Nice. Okay. So how many GPUs will we have to buy?
All of them.
Okay.
Only all of them.
Okay. All right. So in my calendar, I have like two companies that I'm quite excited about at the moment. One is trying to, with their software, trying to help supply chain managers handle all the chaos and the daily ad hoc management requests in order to deal with supply chain disruptions and frankly, just even if it's not a disruption, just the day-to-day handling of that operations. And it does have semantic AI as part of that to basically help them structure that. So that's a space I'm interested in, and our partner Adam knows that space very, very well. He's helping me understand that better. And then the other one is basically it's very, very close to a true arbitrage model in working capital financing between small construction contractors and the basically the developer of the project. So that's an interesting timing for a solution like that. It looks like it's quite ingenious model that I haven't seen quite like that anywhere else. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper into that one.
Yeah, intrigued to learn more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice.
let's see. Sorry, Shub, I really have to go to this conference now.
I mean, I won't stand in your way, dude. You're on your own on that one.
Okay, sir. Well, I'll catch you next week then.
You will.
Okay.
All
Cheers.
right. See ya. Cheers.